The first time Principal Dalton mentioned the new class, the entire auditorium fell into a hush that felt unnatural. Not quiet like bored teenagers checking their phones. Quiet like every breath was suddenly borrowed. I sat wedged between Kayla and Marco, half listening, half daydreaming about graduation. Dalton adjusted his tie and said, "Starting Monday, all students will attend a mandatory pilot course. Integrated ethics and ontological studies." He smiled too broadly when he said the name, like he was proud of a private joke. Kayla snorted. "What the hell even is that?" Marco whispered back. "Sounds like philosophy class had a baby with a cult." The room chuckled soft. Nervous, but the principal's smile didn't waver. His eyes scanned us, lingering just a fraction too long on each row, like he was memorizing our faces. He added, "This is not optional. Attendance will be strictly enforced. Failure to comply will result in consequences." He paused just long enough for the word to hang, heavy and cold. I remember thinking the way he said consequences was wrong. Too rehearsed. By Monday morning, rumors had infected every hallway. Someone claimed the school board didn't authorize the course. Another said a government truck was seen unloading crates by the science wing after midnight. My locker neighbor swore a custodian quit on the spot when he saw the new textbooks. We laughed it off. What else could we do? But even laughter felt brittle. Fourth period. We shuffled into room B12. The classroom had been gutted desks replaced with a perfect circle of chairs. The blinds were drawn, shutting out the gray February daylight. On each chair sat a thin black book, no title on the cover. A woman I had never seen before waited at the front. She was tall, with hair so pale it was almost silver, and she didn't blink enough. She introduced herself only as Ms. Vera. "Sit," she said. "Just that. No, please." The air felt stale, like the room hadn't been opened in years. I picked up the book. Its cover was warm, as if someone had been holding it moments before. Marco cracked a joke about secret cults, but Ms. Vera turned her head toward him without moving the rest of her body, like a marionette's neck twisting on its string. "You will find," she said softly, "that jokes do not help." No one laughed after that. We opened the books. The pages were blank, least at first. As my fingers brushed the paper, words began to appear, not printed but etched, as though invisible ink was surfacing beneath my skin's heat. The first line read, "To learn is to forget what you were." I felt a prickle run down my spine. Kayla's eyes met mine. She mouthed, "What the hell?" Ms. Vera began pacing the circle, her heels silent on the tile. "This course will teach you to see the old subjects you studied, math, science, literature, lies of omission. Today, we correct that." She stopped behind me. I swear I could feel her breath against my neck, though she didn't lean close. "Read the next line," she commanded. I looked down. The second sentence had burned its way into existence. "The walls of your world are thinner than you think." When I hesitated, her hand landed lightly on my shoulder as he called. "Louder." I read it. My voice cracked. A low hum filled the room. Not from any machinda. Air itself, vibrated. The blinds rattled though no wind stirred. Then the bell rang for lunch. But the clock above the door still read 10:17. Miss Vera smiled faintly. Time is a suggestion. At lunch, the cafeteria buzzed with forced normalcy. Marco tried to joke about it again, but his hands trembled when he held his soda. Kayla kept checking her phone even though there was no signal, no bars, no Wi-Fi. None of our phones worked. I caught Principal Dalton watching us from the doorway, his lips moving silently, like he was counting. That night, I dreamt I was back in room B12. The books were whispering, though their pages didn't move. A phrase repeated over and over. The subject was wrong. The subject was wrong. When I woke, my phone screen was on, though I had powered it down before bed. One notification glowed. New assignment. Lesson 2 begins at 3:33. Attendance mandatory. But it wasn't the text. It wasn't an email. It wasn't from any app I had installed. When I stepped into room B12 the next day, it felt colder, as though someone had left the door open to a winter night that did not exist outside. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered just once, but the after-image clung to my vision like a second, ghostly classroom superimposed on the first. The blinds were still shut. This time, even the edges where light usually leaked in were sealed tight, as if the windows no longer existed. Kayla sat 2 seats down from me, her usual sarcastic energy gone. She whispered, "Did your phone? You know?" "Yeah," I muttered. 3:33. Marco walked in late, his face pale. He opened his mouth to say something, but Miss Vera appeared behind him, soundless, like she had been waiting in the doorway all along. "Sit," she said. The books on our chairs no longer looked blank. Simba's spirals, angles that hurt. My eyes twisted across the pages, like something alive. When I turned a page, I swore I heard a faint hiss, like paper protesting. Miss Vera moved to the center of the circle. Lesson 2. Observation. She raised her hand. The hum returned, vibrating through the floor into my shoes. The clock on the wall trembled, its hands spinning wildly before freezing at 3:33. She said, "Close your eyes." We did. Now, her voice slid into my ears like a blade through water. "Tell me what you hear." At first, just the storm outside, except there was no storm. Then whispers, overlapping, unintelligible. One voice cut through. "My own." Speaking a memory I had never told anyone the night. I carved my initials under the bleachers in 8th grade to feel less invisible. I opened my eyes in a panic. The blinds were open, but it was not our schoolyard outside. It was a gray void, shifted alive. A single dark shape, too tall and too thin, stood where the flagpole should be. Miss Vera's eyes gleamed silver in the dimness. The world is thinner than you believe, but thinner does not mean empty. The figure outside leaned closer, impossibly, until its face or absence of one pressed against the glass. The window should have been 20 feet away, but it was inches from me, Kayla whimpered. Marco bolted for the door, yanking the handle locked. "Leaving is unwise," Vera said without turning. Lesson 2 isn't over. The lights cut out. The only glow came from our books. Their pages now illuminated from within. The symbols rearranged themselves into words. Do not let it see you move. Something brushed my shoulder. Cold. Too cold. The hum deepened until it became a low, pulsing throb that I felt in my teeth. Then, silence. A distorted voice, not quite human, seeped through the darkness. Stay. Still. I held my breath. Beside me, Kayla's breathing was ragged. Somewhere across the circle, a chair creaked. The voice snapped, sharper now. You moved. A wet sound followed like fabric tearing. Marco screamed once, then nothing. The lights blinked back on. His chair was empty. His book lay open on the floor. A single fresh word burning on the page. Absent. Miss Vera didn't look alarmed. She only closed her own book with a snap. Lesson to observation complete. I wanted to shout, to demand what had happened to him, but my throat felt sealed. Tomorrow, she said calmly, we begin integration. When I walked back into room B12, Marco's chair was gone. Not empty gone, as if no one had ever sat there. The circle was flawless again, every gap accounted for. No one said his name. No one even looked at the space where he had been. Kyla's face was pale and drawn. She sat stiffly, her hands clenched in her lap, eyes fixed on the black book before her. When I tried to whisper to her, her lips barely moved. Do not let her hear you. Miss Vera entered without a sound. Her silver hair caught the fluorescent light, throwing glints across the walls like shards of glass. Welcome back, she said. Today begins phase 3. Subject integration. She stepped into the center of the circle and held up her own book. The pages fluttered without wind. Words appeared mid-air between us letters, burning briefly before fading. Remember, to learn is to forget what you were. Kayla swallowed hard. Where's Marco? She whispered, unable to stop herself. Vera's head tilted slowly toward her, too far, like a hinge ungreased. Ooh! Something in my mind buckled. I could feel the memory of Marco slide in, edges softening, like someone smudging a photo until the face vanished. I clutched my book. You can't just erase him. My voice cracked, raw with anger and fear. The hum returned low, steady, deeper than before. The words on our pages rearranged themselves again, forming a single, dreadful phrase. Identity is a privilege. Vera's voice was soft but carried like thunder. Integration requires surrender. Open your books to the blank page. The pages were blank, but faint outlines pulsed beneath, like veins under skin. She instructed us to place our hands flat on the paper. The moment my palm touched it, a chill shot up my arm. Symbols etched themselves into my skin, crawling like living ink. I tried to pull away, but my hand was stuck. The book's surface had become liquid and cold. A distorted voice seeped from everywhere at one's walls. Floor, air. Stay still. The room warped. The circle of chairs elongated, bending into impossible angles. Kayla's face stretched and split into flickering versions of herself. each one mouthing different words. The blinds snapped open, and outside was not the school but a pulsing expanse of gray mist. Shapes moved within it, too many limbs, too many faces, always just out of focus. Farah spoke, her tone almost kind. Do not fear. The lesson only hurts if you resist. The hum turned into a shriek that rattled my teeth. My book glowed hop. Beneath my hand, images flashed across its pages. My own memories, childhood birthdays, my mother's handwriting, the lake where I'd once nearly drowned. Each memory blackened and flaked away like burned paper. I screamed. Kayla screamed too, but hers was cut short like a sound swallowed mid-breath. I turned, but she was no longer in her chair, in her place. Her book open, a single word written in scorched letters. Merged. The shrieking stopped. Silence fell like a blade. I was alone with Ms. Vera. She approached, her steps impossibly slow yet covering the distance in an instant. She crouched beside me, her pale eyes luminous. You are doing well, she whispered, but you must let go of the world you knew. It was too small for you anyway. I felt the weight of her words press into me, heavy, a stone. Somewhere outside, in that gray expanse, something enormous moved its shadow, blotting out what passed for light. Vera brushed her fingers across my temple. The touch was freezing, and for a heartbeat, I saw through the walls. The school was just a thin shell clinging to a void, and B12 was a hole punched through reality. Then she smiled to many, Tithan said. Tomorrow, you will not remember ever being afraid. But I knew she was wrong, because even as the room righted itself, as the blinds closed and the hum faded, terror had already rooted itself so deep in me that nothing, no erasure, no integration could ever scrape it out. The next morning, the school looked normal but wrong, like a photograph with the contrast pushed too high. The hallways stretched a fraction longer than they should have. Lockers I had known for years bore names I did not recognize. Room B12 smelled of wet stone. When I entered, there were fewer chairs. I counted once. Twice there had been 20. Now there were 10, but no one seemed to notice except me. Principal Dalton stood in the corner, his tie crooked, his eyes glassy. He said nothing, just nodded toward Ms. Vera like he was handing us over. She began the lesson without preamble. Phase 4, she said, is not taught. It is lived. The blinds shot open of their own accord. Outside wasn't gray mist anymore. It was a shattered world, pieces of sky and ground suspended like shards of broken glass. Through one fragment, I glimpsed the school parking lot. Through another, my own bedroom at home. Lights flickering though I was not there. Between the shards was nothing, just a hungry darkness. My book vibrated in my lap. Letters seared across the page. Step through. Knowledge waits. A faint cry echoed from nowhere, and everywhere Kala's voice, warped and distant. I backed toward the door, but it dissolved beneath my hand. Just missed. The chairs began to slide toward the center of the circle, scraping against the floor in unison. Miss Vera watched silently, her head cocked too far to the side. The sound grew louder, turning into a metallic screech. Suddenly, the floor split like paper tearing. Beneath was not concrete, but a corridor of shifting symbols. The air smelled of ozone and blood. "Do not be afraid," Vera whispered. "Integration is almost complete." The distorted voice returned, louder than ever, echoing through every shard of fractured reality. "Stay still." But I could not. Something enormous slithered between the shards, an entity whose shape refused to settle. Each time I blinked, it looked different. A towering figure of shadow, a many-limbed insect, a faceless version of myself. The shards of the outside world rotated slowly, scraping against each other with the sound of grinding bone. Through one shard, I saw Makohi's face hollow, his eyes too black, voids watching me. He mouthed words I could not hear. The hum deepened, and the classroom dissolved completely. I was standing on nothing, surrounded by floating fragments of my life, my house, my locker, my mother's letterall, orbiting that impossible creature. Ms. Vera's voice wove through the chaos. "This is what the curriculum hides. Your reality was a thin, fragile lie. This is the subject you were never meant to study." The creature's limbs awe. Shadows of limbs stretched toward me. Each fingertip brushed a memory. My childhood dog, Kayla's laugh, the smell of autumn rain. Every touch erased something. "No!" I shouted, but my voice cracked into static. The entity tilted what might have been its head. Then, in my own voice, it whispered, "You invited the lesson." I stumbled backward, stepping onto a shard showing my bedroom. The surface bent like water beneath my foot. The entity lunged not fast, but inevitable. I threw my book into the darkness. It vanished without a sound. The shards flickered. For a heartbeat, I saw Kayla whole, reaching toward me. "Run," she mouthed. The shards collapsed inward, and the world snapped back to room B12. The chairs were gone. The blinds were shut. Only Miss Vera remained, standing in the darkened room, her smile impossibly wide. "Tomorrow," she said softly, "we will begin the final lesson." The clock on the wall ticked backward. I almost didn't come back. Every instinct screamed to run, to feign illness, to vanish, to never set foot near B12 again. But something worse gnawed me. The sense that if I stayed away, the lesson would follow me anyway. When I pushed open the classroom door, there were no chairs, no desks, only darkness, thick and absolute. The hallway behind me was gone. The door had melted into the wall. Ms. Vera's voice emerged from the black. "You returned. Good. It means you understand." "I don't," I whispered. "I don't understand anything." A low hum began again, stronger now, resonating in my bones. The floor beneath me felt like glass flexing under weight. From the dark, fragments of my world floated past my locker door. The school mascot banner, the cracked tile near the cafeteria turning slowly like debris in water. Vera stepped into the faint light leaking from nowhere. Her silver hair seemed almost liquid now, and her eyes reflected infinite versions of me, each one slightly wrong. This class, she said, was meant to prepare you for what's underneath. What's always been underneath. She gestured, and a page appeared before me, suspended amid. The words on it seared themselves into my mind. Reality was a convenient lie. The subject you studied was wrong. The darkness throbbed. From it, the entity emerged taller now, its edges bleeding into new shapes. One moment it wore my mother's face. The next it was a child's silhouette. The next a faceless, towering figure cloaked in static. Its voice came distorted, layered like 1,000 versions of my own. Stay still. Stay still. The shards of memory around me began to crack. Through one, I saw my house windows shattered, lights flickering as though time itself faltered. Through another, the schoolyard looped endlessly, students frozen midst. I won't integrate, I said, my voice trembling. I won't let you erase me. Vera's smile didn't fade. You already have. Pieces of you were taken the moment you opened the book. What remains is negotiable. The entity's shadow stretched across the void, wrapping around my ankles like smoke. My skin burned where it touched. Somehow, my hands found the black book again, though I hadn't brought it. Its pages were empty now, save for a single sigil that pulsed faintly. Instinct told me to trace it. My finger burned against the page, and light flared weak, but enough. The fragments around me trembled. The entity recoiled slightly, its many faces flickering faster. I shouted into the void, though I wasn't sure if I was screaming at Vera. The creature, or the universe itself. This subject is wrong. The hum fractured into static, the darkness splintered. For a heartbeat, I felt gravity again. The classroom blinked back into existence. Desks, chairs, fluorescent light soul, perfectly ordinary, except the walls were blank. Where posters had been, the clock read no time at all, just a black, empty face. And outside the window was not the schoolyard, but an endless gray horizon. Vera stood at the blackboard, writing words that appeared only as ash before fading. Class dismissed. She turned once more, her eyes catching mine. But remember, the lesson never ends. Wherever you go now, it is part of you. Then she was gone. The room was just a room, silent, unremarkable. I ran. Down unfamiliar halls, past lockers with names I didn't know, through doors that led to places I'd never seen. When I finally burst outside, the sky was a blank canvas of mist. I drove for hours. Roads bent where they shouldn't. Town signs bore impossible names. Every so often, in the corner of my eye, I glimpsed the tall shadow walking just beside the car, never falling behind. At home, or what should have been home, the windows were dark. The photos on the wall showed strangers with my smile. I write this now in a borrowed notebook, my hands still trembling. If you're reading this, check your school's schedule. Check the names of your teachers. Check that your memories are still your own. Because if you hear about a new class, one that was not on the curriculum, if you Find a blank book waiting on your desk. Do not open it. Do not attend. Do not learn what they're teaching. The subject is wrong. And once you learn it, there is no